Okay, this how-to video is going to talk about the Cadence team design option. So to be able to run this option, I would need at least an Allegro PCB Designer license. So I've got a file change editor, Allegro PCB Designer. I'd also need the team design bolt-on option. And the basic idea behind this is that in today's industries, there's very, very tight deadlines on PCBs, and sometimes you want to have multiple designers working on the same board. So what happens is you would get the master designer to start with the board that he has, and he would then effectively split this up into different sections that he would then pass on to his team to go and work on the different sections. So if we go to the place menu now, there's something called the design partition menu, and I've got something called a create partitions. You can see in the options menu changes, and it's asking me to I can draw some partition lines, or I can use some right mouse button options. So if we go to right mouse button, we can add a rectangle or a shape. So let's just add a rectangle. Now I'm going to allow myself plenty of room here to give the designer some working area. I want to split up the memory section, for example. So that effectively creates the first partition area. Let's just call this memory. Now I can specify different start and end layers. I'll go into that in more detail in another video. Let's just apply that. So I've now effectively got a memory section of the board. So we'll just leave it at that. If we then go to the place menu, design partition, I've got something called the workflow manager. And this is a way for the master designer to control this data that goes in and out. So I've got a memory section here. It's going to generate a memory folder and a memory.dpf file. I can then export this out. So using the export option, I'm going to suppress email because you can actually have an option that this would actually tie into your Outlook mail system, and it would then send an email to the designer to say, I've got a design ready for you to go and work on. So let's just export this. It then exports the partition that I wanted. The other thing to just note here is that there is also an option for the silk screen top. So you can see I can export a silk screen top and bottom, which means that I can have a separate designer working on moving all the silk screen ref desk positions, etc. Once that's done, if we go to the working directory where the board is, what you'll see is I've now got a memory folder, and in that memory folder is the DPF file. So as a separate designer, you could say, right, that file's ready for you to open. You could then go File and Open inside Allegro. I was looking for a DPF file. I could go to the memory folder, and there's the memory folder option. Now what you'll notice when he opens the DPF file is that the section where he's allowed to work on is the normal visibility colours. Everything else has been effectively greyed out. So he could then come along and work on and start working on his design. Let's just make a couple of changes from a routing point of view. He can effectively just work his way through the design to make the changes and do what he needs to do. Once he's done that, he saves the file and says to the master designer, okay, I've made some changes. So the master designer would then go back to his board. And if I then go to workflow manager, so the place design partition workflow manager, you can see it's in progress, but I've got it here, it's ready to import. Let's just import it. It imports the partition. Once that's done, we then zoom in and you can see that the design changes have been imported into the master design.